Hello there, and welcome to this little arty corner of mine here in the valleys of South Wales, in Wales, which is part of the United Kingdom. It's a sunnyish day, some clouds out there, but it's too sunny for me and my weird skin to go out in. I can burn through factor 50 sun cream, and more so on my face because some cream I need to use for a skin condition there. But it's nice to be inside, and I can hear sirens outside. And there's a wind blowing the trees around, and it's just comfortably warm today. Yesterday it was a bit too warm for me. But anyway, I'm wittering. Welcome to my little channel here. You're all most welcome. And if it's your first time visiting, you're especially welcome. But if you're returning, you're also especially welcome as well. If you do like what I do, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Follow along with pens, pencils, whatever media you've got. Although I use specific media, it doesn't mean you have to go out and buy it. And just to make it clear, I'm not sponsored by anybody. I'm not gifted products. I buy everything myself. So I'm not saying you have to get these things. These are things that I like or things I've got in my stash from years ago. And if you care to mention me, if you share your artwork or mention a video that you followed, then that would be absolutely lovely as well, to encourage more people to come along and perhaps get the encouragement or help advice that they might need for various things. So in front of you can see a couple of things. This one here, I can't remember if I showed you this one. It's a typically Angela flowy piece of art, and I've added shadow here with pencil, and I've just started adding greens on the top because I want to do this sort of like yellowy green and sort of like a bluey turquoisey colour. Because I find that colour combination quite pleasing to me, but we'll see. It's another work in progress because, you know, that's what I do. This one, actually this one's interesting because I may have shown you this one, but I started adding shadow here not with a graphite pencil but with a sepia Inktense pencil and a water brush, so I'm able to spread this out. Now then, I can't remember who it was, and I will respond to your comment. I did see it yesterday. But some people say they don't like Inktense pencils because they are very saturated and too bright and too much for them. If you're heavy-handed with pencils, whether they're water-soluble watercolour pencils or something like this, you can pick the colour up from the tip of the pencil with a brush, a wet damp brush, and use that directly to paint. Or you can actually take it off and put it into a palette and add, dilute it down to the colour you would like, and should always re-wet on a plastic palette or a porcelain palette. You don't damage the pencils, but I would recommend you leave them to dry if you do want to use them on paper, because when they're damp, they put a lot more colour down than when they're bone dry. But I quite like this, and I like the sepia colour because it's a warmer, it's sort of like it's quite a coolish brown. So just to give you a hint, a little sight into this, I was doing this last night and a bit this morning when I woke up, something botanical, and it's going to end up being 21 centimetres long. I'm not sure how wide it is. Most probably that was about 6 centimetres, so about 10 centimetres wide. And I'm using an 01 pen. Yes, an 01 micron. Yeah, I know, crazy, but it's true for me. And then this is the one, and you can hear loads of Inktense pencils rolling out the way. This is the one I was working on in the previous video, and I'd used graphite pencil to add shading here. But then my memory kicked in and I thought, I've got Pitt Artist pens, Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens. I've got a full set of the colours in a box, and I've got extra greys because I like to use these for shading. I can't use alcohol markers because A, the paper just soaks them up and they just bleed out, but B, I use Documentus ink, which, if I remember correctly, alcohol ink will smudge it, and we don't want smudging of nicely drawn lines. But these contain Indian ink, which when dry are permanent, but if you do a section at a time and you want to blend it out a bit more, you can use a damp brush. But you have to be quick. You can't do it all and then expect the dry bits to blend because it dries. And so what I'm going to do to begin with is I'm just going to start adding some shadow using this pen. Yeah, and this one is a warm grey. I've got cool greys as well. As I'm doing this, I'm thinking, oh, I wish they had I wonder if they do these in fine liners, because me and brush pens have a love-hate relationship at times because I can be quite heavy-handed with them. So I'm just putting shadow where I wish. And yeah, I'm doing this on my drawing board. This was a plain drawing board, but I attacked it with alcohol markers and a white Posca pen. And I wanted to put some gold on here as well in places. I don't think I did. I think I might have thought about it. And then I sprayed it with a clear satin varnish to seal it. And so it's not very shiny, but it seals it nicely so it will last. Yeah, and I know somebody's likely to say, oh, you'd be better off having a plain background, but today I feel like working on this. It took me a lot of time to do because it's an A3 sized drawing board, which means it is bigger than A3. I'm not sure if it's an A. It's not. I don't think it's an A2. That would be silly for me. You can see I'm just adding this, and as it dries, it does lighten up a little bit. But having the brush pen means that I can get thinner lines where I want the lines to be thinner. And like with all of these, if I want to darken the shadow, I can work back over it, or I can use a darker pen, but I'm of the mind, I think today I prefer to just use the one colour and see where we go. And like graphite, I'm not going to have those soft blended out edges, but to be honest with you, the spaces that I'm working in are often so tiny that if I try to soften the graphite, it just fills the whole space, and that's not what I want. I want some space that where we've got highlights left, so the colours can shine and we get that contrast. But yeah, a couple of you had said you'd like to see this being coloured, so I'm not going to do it all in one video because I know it's going to take me hours, and I do get a bit irritated with colouring after a short while. It is not my zen mode of working. It can be. I can get into a nice state with it, but I do need more breaks than, say, if I'm drawing or if I'm acting colour digitally. Although it can take me a long time to colour something digitally as long as with traditional media. You wouldn't have thought that, would you? But it speeds some things up. It certainly makes editing, drawings a lot better, cleaning, don't have so much line cleanup and smudges you get on a background to clean up when you've been drawing. Removal of any remaining pencil lines or the indents they leave or shadows they leave. Really does help with that, but it takes me just as long, if not longer, to add colour digitally, because I work in layers of colour and contrast and things. This was probably a much quicker way to do it, but I think I have to work in my own way and find out how I can get things to work the way I like them to work. The nice thing about this pen is that I'm able to control the shape of the shadows a lot more as well. And you might see here in this one, I've made the top bit curve around and thicker than the other bit. Do you want to go back and add some here on the sides? Okay, will I do all of this? I think I might, simply because it's relatively quick compared to adding colour. I don't find it tedious, particularly. I think the tediousness of adding colour comes when I'm using more than one colour to add into a section. Constant swapping and changing of colours to add them down. This one, I'm going to add the shadow and a kind of shape at the bottom that's kind of an L shape, but I'm going to curve the inside bit of it as well. So it looks a little bit like these are cobblestones or something. They've got curved edges on them, which is nice. That works for me. Just a little bit there. This one I'm just going to add a line of shadow at the top, the edges, and in the bottom bit. Making the bottom one just that little bit thinner. But automatically it starts to add this dimension to them. This one again, I'm just going to add shadow base. Like so. I am going to add it on the sides. I still haven't decided how I'm going to fill these little leafy shapes in, because I am quite tempted to do them in black. And I have got a black brush pen somewhere. Now then, this one's going to be interesting because I want to get shadow here, and I want to put it here as if these are inset. So this one, I'll put this on the outside, the shadow there. So we're going to go towards the outside on the left and the bottom, and inside this section on the top and the right. And then we're going to shadow where the leaf overlaps, and then towards the bottom like that. So just finish all of these so I get them all done in the same way. So I've got a consistency of application of shading here. And then on the outside, on this side. Like so. I put a lot more on that one. It'll be fine. There's going to be variation in things. Okay, and we'll just put the shadow under here and at the top. Looking, I think I need to take the shadow part way down there. I'm going to put some shadow on the outside of this, just to confuse everybody. And here I am going to put shadow down this side, and then in the base of the V. Just going to tidy up in some places where I've missed a little bit. Okay, for these leafy fronds, I'm going to do the same kind of thing with a rounded kind of L shape as I did for the pebbles, but in this bottom corner. So I'm going to follow the shape of the leafy bit and then just fill it in with a curve. The same here. Like so. And for the part of the leaf, I'm going to go on that side. I'm going to add some down inside there, here, and top and around here. And this one, I think that way would make a bit of sense, possibly. And then the rest of the work will be done by colour. So I'm sorry if I went off camera while I was doing this. I forgot to check that I was constantly in view. I get so engrossed in the process as well. These, if I'm going to add colour, I need to do something about them, and I may add a dark colour to them. And I think I want them to feel that they are raised up off the page, so it's to the left and the bottom of these shapes that I'm going to add the shadow, I think. It may work, it may not, I don't know, is the honest answer. But we'll find out soon enough. That a bit there. That actually isn't too shabby, is it? I think that might work fine. Okay. But of course I can always come back and add more shading after I've added colour. So I've dug out the colours I used the other day, plus a couple of extra greens, because I'll use the same kind of colours, though I may add in some other colours as we go. Now I do have, I've got this lovely fern colour, and I really love this colour. It's that lovely yellowy green, and I just think next to the browns it just adds that lovely kind of colour. Oh, I want my Sienna Gold as well, don't I? Got one of those in there. I know I've got the mustard out. I've also dug out a burnt orange. I've got beach green and leaf green as well. But I don't know about any other colours yet. I'll decide on that as I get going. So I'm going to add some Sienna Gold in here, though the mustard might have been a better choice because this one's quite yellowy. And then I've got the beach green, which is quite a dark green, and it's quite a pure green. You know, it's but it will blend in. And you'll be able to see with this that because Inktense pencils are translucent, as long as I don't apply too much colour, the shading will show through just as it did with the graphite pencil. The only difference here is that I think the greyness is about the same, if not a bit darker, so it might just be a little bit more noticeable. It's subtle, but there is a difference, and I know I showed that in the previous video. And so if you haven't seen that, I'll try and remember to put a link in the description. Okay, I need, hopefully I've got that here, to cross some. I don't know what I've done with that. That's okay, I've got a piece of paper there I can use. And then underneath, I think I might use the Shiraz, which is this lovely red, rich red. Well, this is quite a big section here because I've got ends here. If I follow this around, I've also got an end down here of this section, so I'll want some Shiraz there. I'm going to look at where I can put some darkness in places just to vary this a bit. I've got poppy red here, which I'm going to put, and I'm going to overlap it on the Shiraz just to help with blending. I also have a set of Inktense blocks downstairs somewhere, and they are used, you can use them like chalk pastels, you know, stick pastels, and or similar, to draw on surfaces directly and then activate them with water, or draw on wet surfaces and they automatically react. But you can also use them almost like watercolour blocks, which means you're better able to control how much colour you pick up. They don't stay wet for very long, I do have to say that, but you add water to them. They're not in a pan, so it's not so easy to... Actually, I think I might put very quickly in these places some of the Sienna Gold just to lighten up some of these sections as well, just to add that hint of much brighter colour. I think I'm going back to cleaning this off on the back of my hand because it's easier. I know, didn't think. This is something with me, is that I don't think through what I'm going to do fully. and I end up getting myself in a bit of a pickle. Well, you know, oh no. It's okay, it might be permanent on paper and so on, but it washes off my hands with the layer of skin, the dead skin cells that our skin is protected with. So the top layers of your skin are actually dead skin cells, and they provide a protective barrier to prevent the living cells underneath getting damaged. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but it's true. There you go, a useless piece of information or useful piece of information, depending on your point of view. My head can be stuffed full of them. At random times they come up. So that's quite nice actually. I quite like that touch of yellow that's going on there. And I like the yellow in the green as well. It's quite nice here where they've combined. It's almost like there's a bit of a glow going on. And I'm cool with glows. Okay, I have here, I've got my madder brown. So I'm going to add that here. You can see that I'm not following the shadow with the colours, because I want the shadow to be independent of the tones of colours. I want it to be an added extra layer underneath this. Now I am looking for my red oxide, because red oxide seems to be one of my favouriteest colours in the set. I seem to reach for that, and Sienna Gold an awful lot. Rather than Sienna Gold though, I'm going to put some mustard in here because it will give a different feeling to it. So I'll start with the lightest colour and I'll blend this into increasingly darker and colours and get a nice gradient going here, hopefully. So I do need to just move that a bit more. It's a bit dark there. Be okay. It stays wet enough long enough on here if I do this one section at a time. And I do like to add the colour and then use the water brush, because I like to see the colours I've got there, and it gives me a better guide as to how I can, what colour I would like to add next, or what colours I would like to use next. And yeah, it's beginning to look quite cool, as in nice. Colours are quite warm really. Okay, I've got Fern here. And so I'm going to use that, and I'm going to add some mustard with it, just the fern and mustard. So I've got a much brighter green it'll be here. Just making sure my brush is clean. If I start moving colour around, because I really don't want to add red or brown into this, so you'll end up with a poopy colour. It's okay if you want a poopy colour, but I don't. And then in the middle here I'm going to use Sienna Gold, and hopefully I'm going to find a way to create a kind of gem of some kind. So I'm going to try and keep as little colour here as I can, and I'm going to let this dry before I come back with a darker colour to add some extra shadow in, some extra colour. I do want to add some blues, so I'm going to find some blues, hopefully. No, I don't want iron green. I don't want violet. This is the most irritating thing I find with the Inktense, is that the tops really don't bear much relationship to the colour that they actually are. So I've got a sea blue there, but I really want a darker blue. I've got deep violet actually. Sea blue and deep violet are really rather nice colours together, but I could do with a nice dark blue. Oh, that's a deep blue, so we'll go with that instead of the violet this time. And let's have a look. As perhaps I'll do this little section in the deep blue and the sea blue. And I want to leave a highlight here, which I'll try and preserve as I add colour, but I will add a bit of colour in there. But I really want to move the colour outwards away from there. We'll have to blend the edges a little bit more here, and then blending it into that darker blue around the edge just to help with the shadowing as well. I could have let the Pitt Artist pen do all the work for me, but I still like to add layers of colours. I do tend to be quite monochromatic in my use of colours, or analogous when it comes to blending them. That actually looks not too shabby. For me, that's pretty good actually, because my brushwork isn't brilliant. I tend to approach painting like I do using pens, to be honest. That is really nice. That's going to be, the blues are going to be a nice addition to this, a nice counterpoint, because they will play with the reds quite nicely, and the yellows and oranges especially. Okay, I'm looking for that burnt orange that I picked out. I did, because that should be dry there. That's baked earth. I'm sure I got some burnt orange. That's Shiraz. I'm sure I picked baked earth. I'm sure I picked the burnt orange up. Mustard, red oxide. I didn't. Oh, fine. We'll use. Now I'm going to look for it because I really wanted the baked earth. Oh, not baked earth, the burnt orange. I don't want saddle brown. Burnt orange, there we go. Sorry, sending things flying everywhere. So I'm just putting some of that darker colour around the edge, and I'm going to try and keep it around the edge in the same way I did with the that darker blue. See, it becomes quite bright when you add the water, but if I can blend it out towards the edges, or move it out towards the edges, preserving the yellow inside, then it adds that extra bit of depth to it, which it's doing. Yes, quietly, chuffingly chuffed here. This section here, I want to use oranges and yellows and so on, because I want something, well actually no, I want that round. I want the oranges and yellows. This is the burnt sienna. You can see it's one of my favourites because it's the shortest pencil just about in my set. Nice thing about Inktense though, like so many others, you know, professional quality materials, is that I can you can buy individual pencils open stock, which means you don't have to buy a whole set of them. So you can buy individual pencils. So as I run them down, I'll be able to just you know, get replacements of the ones that I use the most as I use them up, which is great. There we go. So that's nice as well. Gosh, I just looked at the time of the video and it's almost half an hour into it. Blimey, getting plenty done today. This bit in the middle here, I'm not sure what I want to use there. I'm tempted to use plenty of the Sienna Gold, because those lovely golden highlights are just lush. I can do that on each one. Oh, and I've got some to go in here as well. Perhaps keeping it on the lightest areas as well. And then I could use that burnt orange, but I think I might go for baked earth if I can find that one. There it is. As a browner colour, perhaps. I'm just going to add that around the edge, because I think that will give me enough of the shadow that I'm looking for, perhaps, or the slightly darker colour. And I can always add more of the yellow over the top later on if I want to, once it's dried. You see, once it's dried, you can always come back and add more with this. You can't take it away. And like with watercolours or watercolour pencils or other water-soluble media, like Tombows or others. Tombows were never my favourite. I had Tombow dual brush pens, and some of the colours would stick instantly to paper, so you couldn't use them with washes easily. You could never get a clean, good wash with them, you know, or gradient with a damp pen. They were great for scribbling on plastic or a plate or a palette and picking up the ink and using it like a waterproof or water-soluble ink or water-soluble paint almost. Very transparent, but they were never my favourites. And whatever they make with them, the blender pen would pill paper like nobody's business. It would just destroy it. And it, again, the ones that stuck to the paper, it wouldn't shift them. So I'm not quite sure what the purpose of it was. I know what it was. It was to blend colours and to blend them out and so on, but I could never get the knack of it. Okay, so that looks quite nice. I like all of that goldenness there. Okay, so I've got a yellow gem. We've got a reddish one up there. Perhaps down here we could do a greenish coloured one. So it's my favourite fern. This really has become a favourite. I like olivey colours as well. But this fern is just wonderful. It's just right. And yet, look at the colour on the top. Compare it with that. There is no comparison. And then I want the beach green around the dark areas to give me that contrastingness around the edge. And I will come back with white gel pens to add highlights, although I may use some gold as well. The mica powder or gold, or, you know, sort of like a metallic watercolour paints or the Gansai Tambi ones. Or similar, I don't know. Could use gel pens. I'm never very happy with gel pens because there's no variation in thickness or intensity of them. That's really nice. I really like that. That blue really stands out, mainly because it's the only bit of blue I've got at the moment. So let's get those blues and let's do some other things that are blue. I think these might be fine blue, and next to the brown it should look rather nice. So I'm putting the deep blue in the areas where I think it'll be the darkest, and then I can bring a sea blue in for the rest. There we go. With Inktense, I've said it before, little really does go a long way. So it's always best to use less than you think you need, and you can always add a bit more later on. And as the colours are quite bright and saturated, they don't have a lot of, not many of them have a lot of grey in them, you know, a shade that will tone them down. Then you can do that by using shading underneath, as I've done here. So again, with this one, I'm trying to push all the colour up to the darkest area along the underneath bit. I've flowed over here, but I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to try and clean it up. I may just spread it out so it's almost invisible. So keep moving the colour towards that area where I want it to be as dark as it can be. And so we've got some more blue there, which makes me quite happy. Okay. Again, we could do with some more blue. This is the sea blue, so I'm going to pop that in the area where it's going to be lightest. There's one little bit stands out as being obviously, well, why is just that one blue? And that might be a good thing. It might be something that you want people to say, what's that? What, just that one blue? What's that doing? But I create art that isn't about getting people to question things. It's about, like, what I think is about enjoyment, imaginary shapes and patterns and other worlds almost. And I really do like that kind of idea of, you know, creating things that are based on things you find in nature but are different at the same time. Okie doke, so around this one I am going to pop some green. So this is the beach green. And I'm going to go and use my fern. And at the corner of this, where it comes around to that point, I'm going to pop some mustard in there, if I can find the mustard. There it is. Sharpen some of these again. The points are getting a bit fat. So I'll start from the mustard and start to blend that out, hopefully. Now I'm working, while this is wet, I can move the paint almost, or the ink that we've created with water around, and so I can smooth it out. But I'm learning not to look for perfection. I'm looking for something that is good enough. And sometimes there's a texture there and you think, I'll never be able to replicate that. I wish I could because it's perfect. You know, I really love it. But it is what it is. So that's beginning to look interesting. These colours do look dull here compared to the other ones. I'm wondering whether the Inktense has picked up graphite, because this is the same colour here. These are the same colour. Well, this one here is the same as this, and you can see the difference in the brightness of colour. And I think that's why I'm going to stick with the on this paper the Pitt Artist pens, but perhaps on another paper that will take alcohol markers. I could use alcohol markers there. But that's looking quite nice. I think so. Okay, we are going to do something a little bit different. Where's that deep blue gone? So I'm going to use the deep blue down here in the shadowy parts of these seeds. But I think I'm going to use, this is fern, so I'm going to use fern and I'm going to mix them together. Now this could be an absolute disaster, or it could be a thing of beauty. I'm not really sure yet, but I do know blue and green work well together. And it's not something I do often, is mix different colours from different colour families. I think it's something I need to learn to do. And I guess it's just because I don't do much in the way of colouring. Avoid it. But I do have to say, colour really does bring things to life. Actually, that's created quite a nice green. I do like that. I've got to remember to add this now to my swatch collection. I most probably won't, but I'll try and remember after I finish filming. So I've got a reference for it and go, oh yeah, that's how I make that colour. Or these are the ones I like. And it could take me, you know, it may be a never-ending process. It may take many sheets of paper to get through things like this. You know, swatching out my favourite colour combinations. I like that. I like that greeniness of it. I might add some blue onto that one actually now. So I like this deep blue with it. It really does look nice. And of course it will it will be a layer on top, but the colour will show through from underneath because they are translucent. Not completely transparent, but enough. And I think that will make this a bit more vibrant in its way and stand out a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on your point of view. Okay, so I've got my deep blue here. So I'm just going to add some around the edge. Remember, I said a little goes a long way, and it's always best to add a little bit and add more if you need it afterwards, because with Inktense you can't take it away. So this one I just need to soften where I've blended this colour. I think that actually works quite nicely, and I quite like that spot of bright green in the middle. It does work quite nicely. This one definitely needs some more dark blue in the corners and under here, just to bring the contrast out. It looks less contrasty on the camera or on the screen than it does for me, with my eyes, but I still want to add a bit more just to enhance that feeling of volume or dimension, layering. Again, if I need to, I can always add more, and I can always hunt for a darker blue or like an indigo blue, or perhaps use a grey, like Payne's grey or something, just to dull it down a bit. Okie dokes. I'll do one more somewhere. I'm going to let that dry before I do the borders around it. So I'll come over here, and here I really do want to use the Shiraz. Now I've got my pencil sharpener, so you're going to have to excuse the grinding noise. It's one of the ones with the windy handles on. A helical pencil sharpener. I broke my last one. I absolutely broke it, and I don't know how I managed to do it. Never broken one before. But I am going to use Shiraz and the Poppy on these outer borders or edges of the ribbons. Or ribbons? Not what I'm calling them. Well, they seem to be. I'm going to leave a little gap in the middle, so there's a place for the red to, the poppy red to, I haven't done it there, but fade quite a bit. And I am overlapping this with that Shiraz, because the Shiraz is really quite a deep colour and a strong colour. I do want to get them blending nicely. So I'm just adding a bit more, just so I've got enough Shiraz to blend along the whole of that poppy. And I think this side I might need to add just a bit more poppy, just to get that blend going. May have added too much here, but you know, it'll be what it is, and I have to trust the process. Trust my instincts, which with colour I don't fully trust. But everybody sees things differently to how I see them, so that's fine. And some of you will love it, some of you will hate it. That's because colour is very much a personal choice and a personal preference. Just for some reason I seem to be favouring these colours at the moment. And if we're talking about things to do with art therapy and psychology, I can often reflect what's going on inside you. And even though these are sort of, I guess, more muted colours, you know, they're not in your face hot pinks and lime greens and things, and you know, sort of like really vibrant blues and greens. They're still a vibrant colour, but they're just that bit toned down. There we go. So that looks nice. Now I am going to put, where is it? That one. I've got my red oxide here, so I'm going to add some red oxide here. Yeah, I know, red next to red, but the red oxide is a different colour, and this is the mustard. And I'm going to do the same here, so it will sort of look like this border, this edge, this braid, this ribbon is wrapped around underneath. And it may be that I add a bit of extra darkness to these points here where it does look like it's disappearing underneath. And I'm overlapping the colours just so that I can get a nicer blend. And if I haven't added enough colour, once it's dry I'll add more. I won't try and do it when it's wet because I know I will muck it up. I know my abilities, or lack of them. Limitations, perhaps, is a better way of saying that. I'm actually really enjoying doing this. Although I know that I will need to go and do something a bit different before too much longer. That one may need a bit more colour once it's dried. But I think that works quite nicely. I don't know what you think. I will do one more thing before I finish, and it's this area here. So this is the Sienna Gold, which I know plays really nicely with blue, as in complementary colours. And the redness of it really does do. That's baked earth, so that one must be the burnt orange. Yes. I think we'll add some burnt orange to this one. The baked earth here hasn't made much of a difference, so I need to do something about that in that section. Let's see what this looks like. Excuse the sound of the pencils rolling away from me. Like that. You can see where some of the Inktense hasn't been fully dissolved in water. So how does that look? Not as bright as I thought it would, but it's yet to dry. Yeah, this one definitely needs touches of a darker colour to bring the shadowing out. So I think I'll add some of the red oxide, to be honest. And just see how we can get darker edges to come out. Some shadowing going on. Clean it off so I can just go right on the edge and just gently blend this out that little bit so we don't have quite as harsh an edge. The areas are tiny, but that makes them easier to work with in some ways. Less chance of the whole section drying up on you as you are working. Right, that one definitely needs a big clean up because I've managed to move that red oxide right the way across. And yeah, I'm going to make mistakes, but as long as the Inktense is wet, I can always pick it up with a clean brush, or blend it out with a brush that doesn't have any of the colour on, which is what I'm going to do here. I'll try and move it down towards the edge where I want the shadow to be, which I've done not very well, but I can always come back at a later date. So this is how it's looking at the moment. These I do want to add some more colour to. I'm really not happy with how dull they look. And so I am going to add some more Inktense here, and I'm sure the graphite works, but I'm sure it's because some of the loose graphite is picked up and moved about by the brush. So let's have a look. So this one was Madder Brown. Bottom and at the top. I think there was iron oxide next. Oh, that's not iron oxide. Oh, that one's not. That one is. And then I think there was the Sienna Gold in the middle. Already you can see just with that how much more vibrant it is. Okay, let's have a look. Let's move the Sienna Gold from the middle down into the iron oxide and get them to just mix, and down to the Madder Brown. Do want to pull some of that Madder Brown up the edges just to add that shadow there. Right, okay, so we need to get everything as blended as I can get it there. Clean the brush off again, and then we'll go up in the opposite direction to the top then. Activating it, pushing it as I go, mixing it around. You can see that there's quite a harsh line there. This is where I come back with a clean brush and just start to blend things back and forth a little bit and soften that edge. I think, oh, that's much better than it was. It was looking really dull. And I think it's in comparison to all the other colours I've added today. If I hadn't added these colours, then or used graphite to shade all of these other sections, it would have looked okay. But in comparison, you can see the difference that there is. Hopefully the fact that I used Inktense with the graphite, let it dry, it's locked what graphite moved around down into it, as it were. So I'm happy with that. I said this already, this is one of the nicest things about Inktense, is that you can always go back and add more colour without any fear of disturbing the layers underneath. As long as you've activated all the Inktense. If you've left any unactivated, then the water will then activate it, and you might have an effect you weren't bargaining on or expecting. But again, there's no such thing as mistakes. There's only ever happy accidents, and you can actually get creative and find a way of working with that. Might not be what you want at that point in time, but if you leave it for a little bit and go back to it, you go, oh, now I know what to do with that. Or, the simplest thing is, okay, that's happened there, so if I do the same to all the other sections that are similar to it, then it will be fine. Now that is really rich. I really like that. I'm so glad I went back and added colour. And I'm going to do the same here, though I think I just used the burnt sienna and the red oxide. Find the red oxide. Hunt the red oxide. That's not it. Is that it? That's Shiraz. That's it. May not be everybody's cup of tea, but there's something about very saturated colours that I really like, or vibrant colours. I like people who can work with pale pastel colours, very lots of water, not much watercolour, you know, very delicate colours. And I really do like them. But when I try to do that, whenever I use pastel colours, it never feels right to me. Now, that may be because I don't use pastel colours, or it may just be, this isn't right, this is not my artwork, this is not me. And you sort of like, you just work it out. Now then, I haven't got Willow out here because I think I used Willow there. Let's see if I can find, that's a baked earth. There's a Willow. And I'm going to put Willow down here, but I'm also going to put some red oxide because it's a nice enough colour, but I think it just needs, this section just needs that bit of warmth just to tie it in with others. And the top part was mustard. Oh, that's baked earth. There's the mustard. I'm amazed I can remember what I did with these, to be honest. You can see already, just by adding this colour, it's just bring it in line with other areas. And I think I'm going to add a bit of red oxide as well. Just checking that is red oxide. I'm going to add it at the top, the very top tips. There. And perhaps a smidge at the bottom and round the edges there and where we overlap. Just to add that slightly darker colour but also a warmer colour. As nice as this is, it just isn't working for me at the moment. So again, I'm starting where the Sienna Gold is and I'm pulling the water and colour down into the darker areas, activating all the Inktense, making sure that I don't have too many lighter patches. There's one here. And then I'm just going to work up into the top section. And again, I'll just clean my brush off so I'm not dragging dark into light and creating it all the same kind of colour. This one needs to be spread out a little bit more, I think, or evened out. Again, if it doesn't even out, then I'm not going to fret because there may be an interesting texture that's produced there. So that's a bit nicer. It's not very well done at the end here. With that one, that was quite dramatic. It was to my eyes, how activating that dull, yellowy, mucky, browny colour suddenly livens the colour up and just brings it all to life. It's always a thing of magic, that. Well, to my mind. Okay, this one, we've got red at the top and I think I put a little bit at the bottom, that's fine. I do have to say, I'm so glad I'm taking the time to just go back and re-layer colour on these. Yeah, I've done this section. Didn't think I had for a moment, but I have. So I'm using very, very tiny circular motions with my brush just to get things to blend. I don't want to make great big sweeping movements because I'll end up with everything the same. So that really quite works nicely. The last thing I want to do is these green things here. I say last thing every time, don't I? They're standing out as being a bit too green. So I'm bringing deep blue in and I'm going to make them a bluey green like the others. And I must probably do the same somehow to that particular band here, this one. Just that hint of green, it just ties it in and they don't stand out quite as much like a sore thumb. That's actually looking not too bad. Okay, I think this would work if I use it as the shadow colour as well, just to bring a bit more dimension out here. Again, I'm not going to spread it out too far. Might do at the ends just to tie that greenish colour in. But around here. Sure that something in my head is telling me that shadows usually need to be cooler colours, and highlights or glows need to be warm colours to make them look, you know, obviously there are exceptions to this, I'm sure. And shadows should be sort of like, you should have the colour of, you know, mixture of the colour of the object with the colour that is beneath it. It says the shadow. So here there should be some red in this, but there's not going to be. So I've changed that colour completely, but it is what it is now. So this is my bit of art and bit of advice and blather for the day. Now if I don't put something white underneath this to get a picture at the end, what am I looking for? I'm looking for paper. I seriously am looking for some paper. White paper, there we go. The sheet. It's got a drawing on it. I think it has got drawing on it. But it'll do for this. So there we go. Which way? I'll pop it that way. And I can rotate it if I need to. Try and get it straight. So I'll then use this for my cover sheets. Could do with it being stuck down nice and flat. In fact, let's just do that, is it? That's better. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's giving you some things to think about and ways of using colour. On my screen here, the colours don't look the same as they are on the paper. They look a bit more vibrant. But that may just be because I haven't got my brightness up all that far today. Yeah, eyes, bright light, hurt. No. Keep saying I'm sure I'm turning into a creature of the night in one way or another. But I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've gained something from it. I hope it gives you some confidence and ideas about working with colour. I'm not the best with colour. I don't think I'm the best with colour. But I know that if I stick to limited colours, then it'll work across the whole design. And I'm learning about, you know, even now, even though I've been stuck with my head in art for over 20 years now, I still haven't learnt much about blending colours, different colours. I know, you know, I tend to stick towards sort of like a rainbow order of colours that you can blend. But I think I'd like to do a bit more and learn a bit more about such things. But I think it's slowly with me. If you overload me with information, I'll just go, my brain will just go, no, does not compute. Reject, you know, reboot, restart. And it's a little and often and embedding ideas in. Definitely going to add some of the swatches here into my, you know, the colour gradients here. So thank you for joining me. It's been a lovely hour for me. I hope it's been a lovely hour or so for you too. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, take care, be kind and gentle to yourself, and find time to be creative. Ta-ta for now. Bye. Hoil.